to begin with this. From Hollywood to Main Street, and now the hallowed halls of Congress. Capitol Hill seems to share a dirty little secret with many other industries. It has a sexual harassment problem.
There are two members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, right now, who have engaged in sexual harassment.
Back when I was an intern in Capitol Hill, I felt like I had to, worry more about how I was being perceived in terms of my future career, and I was afraid.
These harasser propositions, such as, are you going to be a good girl? To perpetrators exposing their genitals, to victims having their private parts grabbed on the House floor. All they ask in return as staff members is to be able to work in a hostile-free work environment.
Shocking testimony from Capitol Hill as female lawmakers open up about accusations of sexual harassment aimed at sitting members of Congress.
This member asked a staffer to bring them over some materials to their residence. And the young staffer, who was a young woman, went there and was greeted with a member in a towel, who was a male, who then invited her in. At that point, he decided to expose himself. She left, and then she quit her job.
Now lawmakers are calling for a top-to-bottom overhaul of congressional policies on sexual harassment and misconduct, claiming Congress plays by different rules.
It was really created to discourage the filing and complaints.
Congresswoman Jackie Speier told NBC's Andrea Mitchell the proposed Me Too Act aims to eliminate outdated harassment policies,
Bringing light to a very dark corner of our society.
such as a 30-day cooling-off period.
There's a 30-day period of counseling for legal purposes, a 30-day period for mediation. You can see how that's very discouraging, and the victim has to continue to work in that office during that period of time.
But just how prevalent is harassment on the Hill? Speier says you just have to follow the money. She says Congress reached 260 settlements, paying out $15 million over the last decade. And yes, that's your money, taxpayers, your hard-earned income. But Speier does point out that not all the $15 million was paid out to victims of sexual harassment. Rather, it was used for victims of all sorts of harassment and discrimination happening on the Hill. She also says they've been made under a signed privacy agreement, quietly giving money to the alleged victim, allowing serial harassers or discriminators to just keep doing what they do. And the problem, she says, is far from over.
It's still going on.
Joining me now is one of the most outspoken proponents of this proposed change on Capitol Hill, Representative Barbara Comstock of Virginia. Also joining us now, two women who both say they were harassed on Capitol Hill, Katherine Cichy and Rebecca Weir. Thank you all so much for being here. Representative Comstock, let me begin with you on that story, that chilling story about the young staffer who went to drop off documents at her congressman's home, only to be greeted by him in a towel, and the towel soon disappeared. I know you say it's important to name names and that this is a sitting member of Congress. So what are you doing? What do we all need to do to find out exactly who that is and hold him to account?
Well, let me make clear, this was told to me by a friend anonymously who is a friend of the victim. So I do not know the name of the member, nor do I know the name of the victim. But the person who told me about it, it was for the purpose, of the hearing to say this still goes on, and I thought it was important. And in a way, everyone understands and are reviled by that behavior as you are. And one of the main things we need to do is make sure this never happens to any other victim. This woman did not want to be known, as is the case in many institutions. You've seen that in Hollywood and elsewhere. And it takes a group of people before they want to come forward. But a lot of people, they don't want to deal with a lawyer. They don't want to have to go through these processes. So we want to make it easier for them to come forward, perhaps have an ombudsman, revise our policies so the anti-harassment policies are consistent across the Hill.
Yeah, I mean, on Capitol Hill right now, it's basically the situation that you get more protection if you're a harasser than you get out in the real world. I mean, that 30-day cooling off period, well, maybe I want to be not cool for 30 days. Maybe I want to go after this while I'm still angry.
Yeah, and what you didn't show the testimony of my colleague Bradley Byrne, who is a former labor lawyer, and he set out a lot of the things that corporate America does, the policies they have in place, and really set out some good guidelines, because he's somebody in his private practice before he was a member of Congress who would go to people at a board or a business and say, you've got to fire the CEO. You've got to fire somebody because of their activity. So we have a lot of good expertise now. We're good, and I think it's important for us to know
it's the beginning.
It should be both the men and the women are engaged in Congress, because I've had a lot of my male members very much supportive.
Oh, yeah. It's not all men. It's not all men, but it's too many. It's the beginning of change on Capitol Hill. Hold on, because I want to get to my other guests who are also here.
Okay.
Katherine, let me start with you. Can I start with this? I can relate to what happened to you.
I imagine you could.
Can you tell the audience what it was?
Well, yeah, so I first just want to couch this in the fact that the story I'm about to tell you is not the only instance of sexual harassment I experienced during my political career. It just happens to be the most infuriating and therefore the most memorable. So I was right out of college. I was a government major in college, really excited to work in public service upon graduation. I found Congressman Miller's office. It was a perfect fit. I loved my job. I was proud of my job. I excelled at my job. And after about a year's time, raises were given. And that's important because these jobs are pretty low paying. So I was happy to have that. But then I shortly learned afterwards that, in fact, I had gotten a lower raise than one of my male colleagues who was part-time, did not have a degree like I had, and was closing less constituent cases than I was at the time. And so I asked why the difference in the raise. And I was told, well, he got engaged recently. And so he is a breadwinner now, and he needs the money more than you.
Right.
Fast forward.
So that's Rebecca's first experience, right? With
right,
this.
right. I mean, that wasn't demoralizing enough.
And then one day you went into his office, excited about a proposal you had worked on, and you had that feeling a lot of us have, which is something great is about to happen. I've worked hard on this. I want to present my work product. And what was his response?
Yeah, I was very eager to talk with him, and it was not long after the raises were given, and I presented my proposal. He was receptive. I was really glad about that. And as I got up to leave, he stopped me, and he just said, "My God, Rebecca, you just look stunning. I mean, just amazing today. Really great. Would you mind just twirling for me?" And I was stunned. I mean, I was 22 years old. I was young. I was inexperienced. And I just, frankly, didn't have the tools at the time to be able to respond in the way I probably would now. So I complied. Can
you just tell, how did it feel in that moment doing the twirl?
I mean, it was gutting. I felt like a prostitute. You know, like he was undressing me with his eyes. I felt dirty. But at the same time, it was also just part of the job. This is my situation. That feeling and those types of situations are not unique on the Hill.
They're not unique to the Hill either. Because can I tell you, when I started at Fox News, I was 32. I wasn't 22. I was 32. I'd practiced law for 10 years already. You're a lawyer now. I was asked to do the twirl, and I did it. And I'm still humiliated by that. Humiliated that I did it. And felt degraded in the moment. And I know it doesn't sound like much. You know, like, what do you mean? Who cares? It's a twirl. But it is degrading. And in the moment, you don't know what to do. You know, it's like, oh, my God, I don't want my relationship to fall apart. Why? It's, in my business, it's like, it's a visual business. Is this, I'm not sure. Is this inappropriate? You know it is on some level. But I felt for you when I read that. I know his wife, he's a former congressman, Gary Miller. His wife is denying it. Okay. I want to get to you. I mean, the wife, she doesn't believe it. Okay. Katherine, you had a situation, too, with someone in your office, you say, who was focused on your looks, not so much your brain. Tell us.
So it was my 27th birthday. I was working for Senator Tim Johnson, who, let me first say, is one of the best people I've ever met. He's amazing. But my direct supervisor, the communications director, I was walking home through Union Station with two of my colleagues, and he looked me up and down and repeatedly said, "You look hot," which doesn't sound like a lot, but I felt very violated. And when I took it to my office, the direct words from the chief of staff were, "It's not an ideal situation, but it is what it is." And hearing that as a young woman, it makes you feel like you can't do anything else. You can't go further. You can't.
You have to be objectified.
Yeah, and
that's just part of life.
Right. it is what it is. And I had to sit in the office with this man and continue to work for him and continue to be his direct report, and nothing happened.
Now, we reached out to the supervisor. I know you're not naming the guy who said it to you, but the supervisor to whom you brought it, Dre Samuelson, gave us a statement saying he had fired 2 employees before for sexual harassment. He takes it very seriously. He said, I warned the offending employee I would fire him if he ever did it again, and it never happened again. Is that fair? I mean, it's not to diminish it, but it's not, you know, a federal offense to say you look hot. So is it fair, do you think, that he handled it by saying, this is a warning, you do it again, you're out of here?
I was not satisfied with that. I wasn't.
Because he says you were. He said, do you want me to fire him? And you were like, no, just want him warned.
I don't recall him asking if, and that's the point, like, that shouldn't be on me. It should not be on the woman who was harassed to decide what happens to this person. I'm not going to tell a chief of staff who's been with the senator for years and years, like, yes, please fire my
And you're worried about retaliation, too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, I hope what we're doing here is just providing a light for men out there who are understanding, like, if you want to pay a compliment to a woman in the office about how she looks, which is already you're in dicey territory, but you look nice is always, I feel like that's solid. You cross over into hot, less solid, right? And to all those who out there asking women to twirl, I got a whole lot of for you.
Twirl this.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for telling your stories. Representative Comstock, thank you to you as well. I know you've been very outspoken on this issue, and we need that. All the best to you, all 3 of you. Thank you.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.